Welcome to People in Profit, where we look at how business shapes our world. I'm Kate Moody, and this week we're bringing you a special show from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The world is facing an unprecedented period of political and technological change. So what's in store for the global economy, and what challenges lie ahead? I'll be putting those questions to the OECD head, Angel Gurria. But first, let's take a look at the numbers.
Looking better, but not good enough. The OECD predicts that global economic growth will rise to just above 3.5% by 2018. That's the best performance since 2011, but still short of rates seen before the 2008 financial crisis. While growth in domestic demand in Asia and Europe and improvements in private sector confidence have pulled the economy up from a very low level, factors such as political uncertainties, weak wage growth and financial vulnerabilities are weighing down global growth. Among leading and emerging economies, China is set to keep robust GDP growth of around 6.5% this year. But risks linked to monetary policy and the housing bubble are also expected to build up. India will continue to be the fastest growing economy in the G20 group. Brazil and Russia will both come out of recession, but recovery is deemed weak for Brazil and fragile for Russia, resting mainly on higher oil and other commodity prices. Recovery seems to be firming up for the Eurozone economy, with 1.75% growth projected for this year. On the other hand, the UK is heading for a slowdown due to uncertainties over Brexit negotiations. Meanwhile, the US economy is predicted to pick up over the next couple of years, but its growth outlook has been downgraded by 0.3% due to delays in promised tax cuts and infrastructure spending. The OECD notes that while the exceptional pace of global trade integration has boosted overall growth, it has also led to a decline in manufacturing jobs in developed nations, polarizing the job market and increasing pay gaps between low and high-skilled workers. The resulting rise in protectionist policies is in turn hampering confidence.
Now, to give us some insight into those figures, I'm joined by Angel Gurria, Secretary-General of the OECD. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
You've written that you want to shake up globalization and make it work more for more people. Isn't it too late to turn back the clock on that?
No, because the outlook is better, but not good enough. And also because, as we have seen, practically in every country, there's an important group of people who feel that they have been left out. And what worries us is that there is increasing evidence that many have been left out. That is what we want to address. That is what we want to fix, if you will, while at the same time continuing to support and move globalization forward. We think it's a positive force. The question is, we may not have looked at every angle and not at every consequence, and we have to fix that.
Now, to that end, the theme of this year's forum is bridging divides, reaching out to communities that do feel left behind. What do you say to people who believe that global organizations like your own may have played a role in contributing to that isolation?
I would not claim either innocence of guilt. I would say that what we're about is having, first of all, captured this. We started looking at inequalities 12 years ago. And we published 3 very important volumes analyzing the subject. And in between, every year we've been running the numbers. And now it's not just a question of diagnosis. It's a question of code. What do you do about it? What should countries be doing to reduce the inequalities? And of course, the answer is inclusive growth policies. Inclusive in terms of revenue, inclusive in terms of wealth, accumulated wealth, and then inclusive in terms of opportunities. How do you provide the skills? How do you provide the link between productivity and growth and inclusiveness? And this is what we believe that both the countries as well as companies and individuals should be looking at.
Now, the gender gap is one of the divides that's addressed year after year. Not so much just the issue of proportion of women in the workplace, but the fact that women are paid much lower salaries overall, have positions of less importance. Is that something that individual companies need to be tackling? Should it be done on a state level or by public organizations?
By both, because the policies that will make it possible for things to improve have to be part of public policies. For example, establishing nurseries or daycare centers to allow the women to be able to take their children since early age and then be able to pick them up at the end of the workday and therefore have both the children and and the job. Also, entrepreneurship is something that we want to encourage. So it is happening. It is happening slowly. Now, would you believe that Mexico has 42% women in the parliament? Well, that was legislated. The Norwegians legislated that 40% women had to be in the boards. The Germans went for 30%, I think. Now, none of us like quotas, but we have learned that without legislating or making some kind of quota system in the beginning, things don't happen. So we go for those solutions.
Over the last year, the European Union has been sorely tested in a number of ways. Do you think the European project can survive?
The European project is one of the most awesome, one of the most amazing, one of the most exemplary constructions. And in fact, probably the most amazing and awesome and exemplary construction in the world today. The question with Europe is that it's always reinventing itself, always redesigning, always reinforcing, always looking at what is not quite well and they're trying to fix it. And well, I think admirable as they are, you can say a lot about the Europeans, except that they're very fast. You know, they take their time, and it's natural. You have 28 democracies. You need consensus for many of the things. And then you have some unexpected accidents, like the fact that Brexit happened, and we have to deal with that. But still, Europe is going to go ahead. It's going to continue to integrate. They have to integrate the banking system. They have to continue to integrate the telecom system. They have to continue to integrate the energy system, the electricity grids, etc., in order to complete the physical and economic integration of the continent.
What do you make of Emmanuel Macron's hopes of further strengthening that European integration by having things like a common budget and a common finance minister for the Eurozone? Do you think that's a step in the right direction, or could it further stoke the flames of nationalism and populism that we've already seen threatening that unity?
There have to be common rules for banks. There have to be common capitalization rules, common regulators, and common regulations. We're moving in that direction. We're moving in the directions of having same supervisory criteria, same capitalization rules, etc. But then I mentioned a while ago the question of energy, the question of telecom. If you go as an investor and look at Europe as either Luxembourg or France or Belgium or Italy, rather than the whole of Europe, then your ambition and the amount that you are willing to invest are going to be more limited, because they are going to be constrained by the size of the domestic market, rather than looking at what Europe aims to be, which is one single integrated market that can then attract both European as well as foreign investors to come. The other issues that you mentioned, the institutional and more political aspects, are probably going to be discussed. And in the end, remember, everything in Europe is decided by consensus. So if there is consensus around these ideas, it means that perhaps it's a way to go.
Where does the global fight on climate change stand now that the United States has withdrawn from the Paris Accord? What's the next step to be taken, and why does it matter to economic development?
Well, first of all, because the costs of climate change are just beginning to manifest themselves, and because the highest possible course of action when it comes to climate change is inaction. Now, we have the targets, We have the commitments, and we know that those targets and those commitments are still not enough to get to the 2 degrees, even to the 1.5 degree, of course. It is unfortunate that the United States left, but it does not mean that the United States is not going to continue to reduce its emissions. Why? Well, for example, if you have technologies, solar, for example, that as the Indians or the Moroccans are now enjoying, where you can get 3-4 cents when the alternatives are costing you double, triple, or 4 times that. It's going to be price that is going to be leading. It's going to be just the economics of the renewables that are going to be leading the charge. The only question is, when you have the largest economy in the world pull out of this kind of agreement, then that diminishes what I would call the discipline, and perhaps some of the countries that may not have the same kind of built-in advantages may feel the temptation to relax. And frankly, as I said before, we're not even there in terms of getting to the targets that we're committed to in Paris. So I have expressed publicly in my message in the reaction to the US pulling out of Paris that I expected that perhaps, over time, the US could reconsider their position.
Angel Gurria, thank you so much for speaking to us on People and Profit. That's all for this week's special show from the OECD headquarters here in Paris. If you have any questions about the stories we've been covering, you can get in touch on Facebook at France 24 Business, or you can tweet me at Kate A. Moody. Until next time, thanks for watching.